Well, as the old saying goes, football is a game of inches. And that could not have been truer in Jacksonville this weekend. Florida came this close to spoiling Georgia's college football playoff hopes, and unfortunately, the Bulldogs escaped Everbank Stadium with a 24-20 win. But still, for the first time in a long time, this Florida team looked organized, competitive, like they knew what they were doing. No sideline chaos. There was not a single moment where there were 10 men on the field. It looked like a group that was playing exactly like Coach Gonzalez says, for the patch. They were playing with heart, with discipline, and with purpose. And I do feel like that alone deserves to be noticed. But as we always do on a peek inside Gators football, we are going to break down right now the good, the bad, and the ugly because this was a loss to the Bulldogs, and we don't believe in moral victories around here. But I'm going to start with the good because I do feel like there was a lot here. First and foremost, discipline. Florida committed fewer penalties than we've seen most games this season. And I think that that is a reflection of a team that's listening and locked in to what Coach Billy Gonzalez has said. He stepped in as an interim head coach and immediately brought calm and excitement to the sideline, if that's possible. I don't think that Florida's sidelines have looked calm in a long time. And I'm not talking about they're not calm because they're just so jacked up about this game. I'm saying they hadn't looked calm because they didn't know what they were doing. They weren't sure what the play call was going to be. It always felt like there was a little bit of chaos on the sidelines. And then when we would look to the sidelines and want to see some emotion from our head coach, we weren't. And I think that Billy Gonzalez has brought the exact opposite. When play calls are going in, the sideline looks calm. Everybody knows what's supposed to be happening. But when you look to your head coach for some fire, we got that too out of Coach Gonzalez. And I feel like you could feel the difference. Communication was cleaner, substitutions were smooth, and there was energy without chaos. Play calling also took a noticeable step forward. With Gonzalez overseeing the team as a whole and quarterback coach Ryan O'Hara calling the plays, Florida attacked vertically again. They took shots downfield. They weren't afraid to let DJ Lagway sling it. And let's talk about DJ Lagway for a minute. I thought he was composed. He looked confident and controlled, and he looked more mobile than we've seen since that hamstring injury happened. He moved around in the pocket, he was able to extend some plays, and he even took off for a career-long 26-yard run. He finished 15 of 24 for 166 yards and a touchdown, plus 24 yards on the ground. But I am going to discuss him later because it certainly wasn't all sunshine and roses. But the story of the night for me, Trey Wilson. Wilson reminded everybody just how electric he can be when the ball finds him. 9 catches, 121 yards, and a touchdown. His best performance against an FBS opponent. His chemistry with DJ Lagway is obvious. And with VB3 out and then Dallas Wilson left the game halfway through, Trey Wilson became the guy. Now, in Billy Gonzalez's press conferences since becoming interim head coach, he has talked about some of the things he wanted to do differently than Coach Napier. And one of the things he said he wanted to do was spread the ball around and get the ball into the hands of his playmakers. Now, he gave that answer when he was asked what he was going to do differently, which makes me think that he did not believe that Florida was correctly spreading the ball around or getting the ball in the hands of their playmakers. Watching the game that Trey Wilson had, it makes me think that Trey Wilson may be who he was referring to. In the postgame, he was asked about Trey Wilson as well. And Gonzalez said something to the effect of, well, he does it in practice, so I knew it would translate to the game. That has been a gripe of mine for years. I fully believe you play how you practice. And I just can't imagine that we've are we really practicing this poorly? And that's what the product is looking like on the field. I know there has to be a disconnect, but I thought that was an interesting comment from Gonzalez because has Wilson looked like this in practice all along and just hasn't been getting the opportunities on the field? I don't know, but I'm glad he got the opportunities. He looked hype. I was sad to see him, crying on the sidelines afterwards, but I also kind of loved it because it shows you how much emotion he has for this team, how much he cares. And I think that that's important. And it feels like he's locked in for the rest of the season, and I am ready to see what he can do. And another thing that's on my good list, let's not overlook special teams. Trey Smack, absolute ice in his veins. He hit a 54-yarder that wasn't just great for momentum, but it was. It broke a school record for the most 50-yard field goals in Florida history. And when you think of the players that have really been successful at Florida, I think of Caleb Sturgis, I think of Judd Davis, I think of Evan McPherson. None of these guys hold this record. Trey Smack holds this record now. And that kick gave Florida a 20-17 lead in the fourth quarter. It nearly changed the outcome of the game. All in all, Florida looked like a team playing for one another again, a team that respected their coach, a team that understood the moment, and a team that cared about representing the orange and blue uniform. Now we got to talk about the bad, though. Even with improved rhythm and creativity on offense, Florida still couldn't consistently move the chains. Third down, still a problem. Just 2 for 11. And 0 for 2 on fourth down. You can't stay on the field with numbers like that, especially against a defense as good as Georgia's. Short yardage execution hurt too. The most painful example was probably that 4th and 1 at Georgia's 18-yard line in the fourth quarter. Florida had the lead, they had the momentum, and they had a chance to extend it to 2 scores. And Jaden Baugh got stuffed. I know that we're going to contemplate whether or not that was the right call. I do think it was the right call. I do think that Billy Gonzalez was going for the win. I think that was the aggressive call. I think we could maybe challenge the play call itself, but the offensive line got blown up. So had they done their job, Jaden Baugh, who had been a beast all night long, probably would have gotten that 1 yard. But unfortunately, that play did flip the game. And defensively, the Gators played tough, but they couldn't close the deal late. They pressured Gunnar Stockton early. He had 2 sacks, 5 quarterback hurries, a big interception from Devin Moore. But Georgia adjusted, which is what Kirby Smart does better than anybody in college football. Stockton started finding open receivers, and Florida's depth started to show cracks. But still, you could see the effort. A defense that fought. They weren't pointing fingers at each other on the sidelines. They weren't pointing fingers at the offense. They weren't quitting. They were just fighting. Now let's talk a little bit about the ugly. It wasn't a meltdown. It wasn't a blowout, but it was a heartbreaker. The 4th and 1 stuff, that's a play that's going to haunt them. And if Florida gets that yard, they might go up 27-17. Instead, Georgia gets the ball. They drive 82 yards. Chauncey Bowens, which obviously this is a pain point for Gator fans because he was committed to the Gators before flipping to UGA. He broke free for a 36-yard touchdown. That was a dagger. And then that near 40-yard completion to J. Michael Sturdivant, it was upheld as not a catch on review, inches away, literally. And, I know that's going to be a play that we discuss for years to come. I thought it was a catch. TV thought it was a catch. But here's the issue. When you make a call like no catch on the field, you then have to find indisputable evidence to overturn it. So I do feel like had that been ruled a catch on the field, it would have been upheld as a catch. Because it was ruled not a catch on the field is why it was upheld as not a catch. Now, I think we could also talk about Gunnar Stockton's fumble being overturned as an incomplete pass too. I think that's one that probably should have stood as called. I don't know that you had irrefutable evidence to overturn that one. I had issues with the play calling on Saturday, and I bet Georgia did too. Really confused about that double clap being called a false start at the beginning. I think that was the wrong call, but then when it happened exactly the same way later in the game, they called it offsides on the defense. So it can't be both, right? It's one or the other. They got it wrong in one place. I do think that this catch was a catch. I do think this changes things. But DJ Lagway didn't have pressure on him right then. If he had planted his foot and thrown a good ball, J. Michael Sturdivant is still running. That would have been a touchdown. There was no need for it to play out with all the drama like it did. If DJ Lagway had done what he needed to do, set his feet, thrown a good ball, we would not be discussing this. It's not like he threw as he was getting hit and that's just where where the ball went and Sturdivant just tried to make a play on it. Sturdivant made an incredible effort on there, but he shouldn't have had to. He could have been hit in stride. That one was on DJ Lagway. This is a game of inches that this team keeps finding itself in. They're not getting blown out, but they're just falling short. And it stings because you can feel how close they are to turning that corner. And at the end of the day, Florida didn't get the win. But this also doesn't feel like the same Florida team we've seen the past, 6 games. There was discipline. There was focus. There was pride. And that is what Billy Gonzalez brought to the field in just 1 week. A sense of stability, a belief. You can see that these players love playing for him. And it is not about moral victories. Florida could have, maybe should have won, and they didn't. They fell short. But I still felt like I saw progress. If the Gators bring the same effort, the same attention to detail into the final 4 games, they can finish strong. It's been a long, tough season for these players and these coaches, but they haven't quit. They haven't splintered. They are fighting for each other, and that is something worth rooting for. And that is something that Coach Napier embedded in this team. These players care for each other. They care about playing for Florida. They don't quit, and that is incredibly evident and worthy of our support. As we get out of here, I'll give Sleeper some love. There is a ton of NFL stuff that you guys can pick today, including a free play on Jordan Love's passing yards. Go check out the Sleeper app and use my code PEEK, P-E-E-K, for a 100% match up to $100. Check their terms and conditions because terms of use apply. We appreciate Sleeper for their support. So to wrap up, guys, Florida fell to Georgia 24-20, but they showed a lot of fight, and they showed some organizational improvement, play calling improvement. They are obviously out of the playoff picture, but they're not out of, bowl eligibility. They can continue to play for pride, and any future coach that watched how close the Florida Gators came to beating the number 5 Georgia Bulldogs has to be licking his chops at the idea of taking over this roster and winning immediately. Guys, check out our channel throughout the week as we'll have lots more coming your way. And as always, go Gators.